Good morning, friends. It's Sandra. I am the pastor at Cook's United Methodist Church, and one of my favorite parts of that job has become, in the last 2.5 years, these moments here with you. Welcome to our patio. There are plenty of you who've been gathering with us throughout all of this time, best you can. What a difference you make in my life. Hey Stacy, good morning to you too. What a difference you make in everybody's life. What a glory it is, hey Ruth, that we could gather this way, even if it's just for a few moments, to encourage one another. Isn't it kind of nutty to think now just to see somebody's name and maybe even a tiny little picture of them pop up in real time? It is as if somehow mysteriously we are together for these moments. And so our good mornings, hey Polly, our good mornings to one another, our prayers for and with one another. Hey Julie, isn't that the truth? Sweet blessings for sure, and we sure appreciate you adding yours to it. There's Charlene. Oh, there's so many people popping on now at one time. I can't do it all. I can't do it all. I don't know what God is thinking having me do this. What a joy, though, it is for us to gather together. So I give thanks this morning for this mysterious grace and abundant love of God that somehow in 2022 we can turn on our phones or our laptops, our iPads or other tablets, and be present with one another like we never dreamed before. So it is indeed a good morning. We're mindful today of weather that's moving. Well, we have weather all the time, but weather that's moving in that could be difficult for those who are experiencing homelessness, those who don't have resources like an opportunity to kind of tuck inside and be safe. So prayers for our brothers and our sisters in places all over this world that don't know safety and security. I'm particularly mindful because of something that God shows to Ezekiel in part of what we're going to cover today. And so just I hope that you'll hold those folks all around the world, whether it's violence, weather, loneliness, or disconnection from other people. They're not seen or heard, or the opposite, they're hunted and they have no peace. Many of us have been in those moments, tiny moments in our lives, or those small seasons that seem huge and looming at the time, where we have no peace. Can you imagine, day in and day out? So we are mindful of one another in this time. Would also remind you very quickly too, before we jump into Ezekiel, that we are relaunching our website, and so we invite you not only to check it out, but to engage with it and give us some feedback on some other ways that we can make it even better. I want to offer this invitation, though. If we want to hear from the laity, not just of the membership of Cook's, but those who are active in her ministries, if you have a word of encouragement that you believe God is laying on your heart to share with other people, we would love to include that in the blog section. Right now, it's just a welcome, not only to the church, but also to a way of connecting with one another. And we want your story matters. Matter of fact, your story will speak to somebody else. So if you'd be willing to share a devotional, a word of encouragement, an experience you've had with God, whatever it is that's going on, we'd love to be able to do that. All you have to do is send that to me and my email address. You can find that on the website there. So check that out. Also, a quick reminder of what we're doing. Just watch all the printed information and the places it'll go on the website before long. But we are making our plans now. I know it's dangerous. I don't know if you've heard that Chinese proverb or not, but man plans and God laughs. But we're making plans to go back into the sanctuary for our traditional worship experience, and then add another service as well, so that we've got some things going on, a shift in times and all that good stuff. Watch email updates, watch your newsletter, watch the bulletin, watch all the places where we send out information, and we'll get you up to date on that. So let's, okay, so I've put it off as long as I can. We've got to kind of jump into Ezekiel. Now, I've warned y'all last Thursday that Ezekiel is a different kind of dude. He is, God knows him to be creative, insightful, imaginative. But God quickly draws here in the book of Ezekiel a line between those who live by their own imaginations and those who are open to the imagination that the Spirit stirs up within us. Now, those are not the exact words, but I want us to spend some time this morning looking at kind of in a large, I'm covering a large amount of territory here, kind of the creative ways that God speaks to Ezekiel and helps him understand, the creative ways, for lack of a better word, the creative ways that he asks Ezekiel to be a living prophecy in front of these folks who remain in Jerusalem, those who even are exiled. And let's think about our own imaginations and what role they play in our own spiritual development. Well, that's a lot. I get it. So we're going to cover quite a bit of territory. Now, I'm trying to catch us up. No, I'm trying to catch me up. I've read all of the readings, but I'm going to tell you, Ezekiel, I have to slow down and go through with him. These are the kinds of things. We're going to be looking at quite a bit of, territory, but I'm going to give you just the chapter and then some of the wonky things that happen or are said. So you can go back and take a look at your notes later and draw some conclusions maybe from some specific verses. But look at this. So in chapter 4, we've already dealt with that very first vision. Remember, 4 creatures. They all had 4 faces. They all had the body that was like a man. There were wheels and perpendicular wheels even involved, so they could go in any direction. The rim of the wheel was covered in eyes, which was kind of an allusion to full of sight and understanding. We're going to have that same vision, but I mean, that's the way Ezekiel starts. But you look at chapter 4. In chapter 4, what God has Ezekiel do in front of those who may or may not pay attention. You take a clay tablet. I want you to imagine a basketball coach during a timeout. They're on the sidelines drawing up a play or two to be able to capitalize on even just the shortest amount of time. That's what Ezekiel was supposed to do on that clay tablet. You draw Jerusalem right there, and then on the outer parts of that tablet, you draw those figures that are going to look like siege is being laid to Jerusalem, and then destruction on top of that, to be able to see not just what's in front of them on the horizon, the destruction that has already happened in Jerusalem, but to draw that out as if it is a play. And then on top of that is built this admonition from God, this charge from God. So you're going to bear, son of man. He calls Ezekiel son of man a lot. So son of man, you're going to bear in this image of your life. He's setting it up so that everybody's watching Ezekiel to see what he's going to do next, to listen to what Ezekiel has to say. They're listening to the words, but they're not hearing the meaning or responding to the truth. But I want you laying on your left side for 390 days. That's better than a year, laying flat and bear the weight of the sin of Israel. Now, at the end of that, another 40 days, but on your right side to represent the sin of Judah. What? Well, day 1, day 5 might be pretty inconsequential, but can you imagine as people begin to talk, that dude's still laying on his left side. What in the world does he think he's doing? And we go from that emotional, imaginative moment to this is all you get to eat. God is demonstrating through Ezekiel what it's going to be like to live in a season of rationing. Rationing his food, rationing his water, rationing his physical presence or his physical autonomy in the world, literally between individuals and within his community. The rationing is going to be brutal. In that, there was this jar that had all kinds of ancient grains in it, wheat and barley. Well, it also had lentils and some beans, but millet and spelt, and that's what he's going to make a barley cake out of. And how am I going to cook that? You're going to cook it over your own waste. Ezekiel draws the line. The one who has the most imagination draws the line. Wait a minute now. I have not desecrated myself. I have not contaminated myself by going against any rule you have ever given me. I've not done that before, and God relents. Okay, you can use cow manure. Can you imagine? Well, first of all, it just sounds wonky. But can you imagine what other people are now saying about Ezekiel? And his life is a testimony. As he lives into the prophetic role, his life becomes a testimony about those who trust in God. So we move from drawing out the play of sorts that's going to epitomize the destruction of Jerusalem. Now shave your head, weigh it out on scales, and a third of it, burn it inside the city. Ooh, don't you know? Because singed hair is, ooh. Shave your head, weigh it out. Just throw some of it a third of it to the wind, a third of it, cut it up with the same thing you shaved with, into finer bits. Hide a few of those hairs within your garment, as if to say, this is what's going to happen to those who think they are the people of God. You're going to be scattered and sent. And then he even says in chapter 6, God sends him to prophesy against the mountains. What do they have to do with anything? But listen to Ezekiel's words there in chapter 6. You're to prophesy against the mountains as if they're the ones who built the high places for those idols and those other gods. Prophesy against the mountains as if it's their choice to hide rebels and to hide those who are fleeing in their own wickedness. Well, who's going to be hearing those words of prophecy? Not the mountains, but those who have been a part of the behavior that has now been denounced and pronounced as wicked. Very crafty that God would have him do that. He's given, here's the imagination that God meets Ezekiel with, though. He's given not just a recurring vision of these creatures with multiple faces and the ability to go in any direction, with the presence of authority. But he even gives Ezekiel this vision of those who have been marked. And then, who is it in Jerusalem? Because that's the city that's mentioned. Who is it in Jerusalem that suffers because of their marking? No one. The marking is for the people of God. Those who are marked are those who grieve evil and the things that break God's heart. They grieve for what grieves God in that place. And the marking becomes a place of, or an avenue of security and safety. And as a matter of fact, that's when God speaks through Ezekiel to even say, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, but God speaks through Ezekiel to be able to say, there is no worry when you are mine. It calls to my mind the mark of the beast in Revelation. We are so worried about that because we cannot figure out the meanings, the exact meanings, and I would add the word narrow. We're looking for narrow, specific, exact meanings where there may be none, my friends. But before the beast in John's Revelation asks folks to take on the mark of the beast, there has been already a marking by God of those who belong to him. And they are never threatened like others are. Here we have the same thing in Ezekiel. This vision is given him by God so that Ezekiel can understand the power and the absolute nature of what God says will happen. And he chooses someone like Ezekiel to say in as many ways as possible, this is horrific. The destruction of Jerusalem would not have been in God's will, though he empowered it and he allowed it. It would have been better, and there were plenty of opportunities for folks to listen to what God was asking, to do what God was telling. Ezekiel invokes even the names of 3 folks that we would know, that those people left behind in the exilation of God's people. He mentions Noah, a man of faith. He built the boat. We're talking about rains coming that are flooding, and to that point it had never rained from the sky. Those people couldn't imagine the dew that would come up from the ground. They could not imagine that amount of water, such to be able to create a flood. They thought that man was nuts. But he was faithful and did it anyway. And we count him as a giant in the faith. Daniel, a giant in the faith. Word is already getting back to Ezekiel about what's happening in Daniel's life. Daniel, a wise man and faithful to the nth degree, now a part of those who were exiled in Babylon. And yet, what word is getting told about Daniel? He's being employed by, he's been trusted to basically run the country. So are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Job, even before these two, from the beginning of time, but even before Abraham, we understand the presence of Job. And though he was tested, he was faithful. He was human, but he was faithful too. What does Ezekiel have to say about these 3 in chapter 14? Listen, in this situation, they're not going to be worried about anybody else but themselves. You need to worry about yourself first and let everybody else take care of themselves. What did we say yesterday? When we began to delve into all that Ezekiel will hold for us, God's call to Ezekiel is, you do this out of love for me and in obedience, whether they listen or not. And so all of this kind of craziness with which Ezekiel seems to feel right at home because of his personality and his nature. And God gives him so many metaphors to live out in front of those who need to be learning quickly. I want you to hold on to this chapter and verse very well. In chapter 12 of Ezekiel, verse 11, there's this one more thing. Well, it's not one more thing, but it's one of the other things that Ezekiel's asked to do. Chapter 11, the remnant of Israel, we think, are those who were spared from the exile. Turns out those folks are nothing but they're nothing but a stew on the back burner. Everybody slowly falling apart. Everybody being cooked in their own decisions, in their own poor judgments, in their own faulty and unfaithful behavior. It's those who are going to be coming back from exile that God considers the remnant. And this is what he says to Ezekiel then in chapter 12. Okay, so while everybody's watching, I want you to pack up all your junk like you're being exiled. And then also, just before dusk, while they're still watching you, I want you, with that pack on your back, I want you to dig a hole through this broke down wall around Jerusalem. And they're going to watch you climb through that as if you have your tail tucked between your legs and you are heading out into no man's land. And while in those first steps outside the wall, cover your head so you cannot see the land. Can't see where you're going. When they ask, what are you doing? God's word to Ezekiel, then Ezekiel's word to those people, I am a sign to you. That is the crux of what Ezekiel is to accomplish in front of his people, his own people. Don't be afraid. You will be a sign to them. We would like for it to be an easy sign, but because it is a man just like them, it is hard for some people to be able to receive that truth. But my friends, mark my words, this is true for each one of us. For those of us who bear the name and the image of God, we are a sign for this world. And probably a very specific person and persons. Because of your personality, because of your experiences, because of the way you use your imagination, or the way you use other skills that God has given you and allowed you to learn, because of the gifts that are in unique combination with those things we've already named. You are a sign for this world. When you and I refuse to be that kind of sign, there is a blank spot in the painting. Others are missing. Others around us are missing a demonstration of truth, a demonstration of prophecy, a demonstration of God's love and grace and mercy. When we won't be that sign, it's as if there's a moment of silence that others don't understand. Jeremiah and Ezekiel both did some really wonky things at God's behest. But don't you know, for somebody, when they watched Ezekiel weighing out the hair that was on his head, it clicked for them. Oh, we're about to head into a season of rationing that is not going to be good. Rationing our food and our water is one thing, but rationing God's Spirit among us. And there will be somebody in this lifetime who sees in you the representation, the beautiful demonstration of God's best. And they will then understand God in a way they could not without you. You are a sign for this world. Are you perfect? No. Are you going to be perfect on this side of glory? Wesley says we're going on. We're going on. A step closer today, a step closer even tomorrow. We are going on towards perfection. And that's not about our own perfection, but the perfecting of the reflection of God's Spirit, God's image, the demonstration of all that God is. You are a sign for this world. I want you to do two things today. I want you to be bold enough to risk feeling arrogant, but I want you to be able to share with God 5 different times you know you were in that sweet spot. You were the image of God for somebody else. You had the right word, you had the right action, you did something that was hard. At 5 times that you know that you were in the right place, in the right way, for God's sake and for someone else's. And then I want you to spend some time talking and listening with God about, well, let's make it easy. We'll just say with two situations, 2 people that you have a hint that you might be a sign for. It could be a single person. It could be a situation that involves many people. How about you practice letting God know? You realize He wants to work through you. For you, yes, but He wants to work through you too. And practice allowing yourself to be that sign for somebody else by God's choice. And watch how freeing that feels. You don't have to come up with the moment. You don't have to come up with how you're going to be the sign. Let God take care of that. He's the one who chose you for the moment. He'll do it. Well, what a joy it is to agree to participate. What it must have been like for Ezekiel to carry his things on his back, to move those rocks and dig through a place in that destroyed wall. To know people are watching me as I walk through, waiting for them to ask, what are you doing? And what it must have felt like to say, not what Ezekiel would have said, but what God had Ezekiel to say. I am a sign for you. Being partners with God is a both and kind of a prospect. It is both exhilarating, language defying, but it'll make your knees knock too. I'm so glad God gives us the strength to do that all. You are a sign for this world, and I celebrate God's choice. I'm also really, really glad that somehow we are connected so that I can hear about it and watch it happen. I hope the same is true for you. Sure makes us kind of keep our eyes open differently on one another now, does it not? Let's pray together. Lord, the thought of us being a sign for somebody else or somebody else's in this world is more than daunting. Yet we would have no problem, Lord, in making a list of those who have been that kind of a sign for us. A Barnabas, you know, an encourager, somebody who's come alongside us and spoken prayers over us, words of encouragement to us, who have helped us figure out life's difficulties. You've raised up those kind of people in our lives, but why is it so hard for us to think about us being that kind of person in another's life? Unless we're thinking about our spouse or our children, a close friend. Help us to be mindful of Ezekiel and how crucial he was to so many. They're making sense of the destruction of Jerusalem and your promises to raise up a remnant. Help us to be able to celebrate, to tell the truth about how we have already been assigned to someone, or a sign regarding a particular circumstance, a sign from which others can draw encouragement, and how we have been faithful to you in being that sign. That will give us, we believe, encouragement and the kind of oomph that we need, Lord, to continue to choose to be that sign according to your imagination, not just our own. Well, I guess we're asking to be like Ezekiel, Lord, even if it sounds crazy to other people, even if it sounds crazy to us, to be prepared to say the words or to do the things, to be in action in front of folks. We are willing, we are glad for you to use us as a sign of hope, a sign of promise, a sign of encouragement, a sign of love and mercy and grace. And even if the words will be hard to hear, would you give us your courage still? Help us to understand how we already are a sign for this world. And help us look for those opportunities that you will present to us, that we indeed, whether they listen or not, can be faithful in being your sign. You are an awesome God. Your ways are higher than ours, but we long to walk more closely with you. May it be so. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. My friends, enjoy this gorgeous day. Know that you are the beloveds. And what name do we go by when we belong to the one who is love? We are beloved. So, beloveds, I'll see you soon.